I'm Lucian Fagoros. I'll be the moderator for this session, Securing the Industrial Internet of Things and Energy and Power. So a couple of housekeeping items. I want to make sure that you all folks post the question in the Q&A. That's where you get basically an invitation to join the VIP community, waiving the $1,000 fee. In addition to that, right after this session, we will have a drawing for the book written by the keynote speaker of this morning, Daniel Izalde. So feel free to leverage the Q&A to get there. So I'd like to introduce, we have a couple of great speakers for this session. John Clay, the VP of Threat Intelligence, and Richard Koo, the VP of Commercial IoT Business, who will be taking us to a couple of presentations. Then the questions, the question you submit, we'll get to them, and wherever we have left over, we're going to answer them offline. So with that, I'd like to turn over to John Clay. Introduce yourself and go from there.
Yeah, Lucian, hi everybody. John Clay here. Been in cybersecurity now for over 25 years, all with Trend Micro, doing a variety of different roles, from sales engineer to what I do now, which is really working with our threat research teams and sharing our threat research out to the world with all the different areas that Trend Micro covers in our research, from regular general cyber threats to even IT, OT threats that we're starting to see today. So looking forward to the presentation and the questions at the end.
Thanks, John. This is Richard Koo, and I've been with Trend Micro for a little bit with 30 years, similar to John. I only been working with Trend Micro. I have many roles here in Trend Micro for the past 30 years, everything from researcher to product development as the product management, and have developed many products across different industry, and also a different type of customer base, from consumer to small business, as well as some of the very largest enterprise customer around the world. Over the last 5 or 7 years or so, I spend most of my time very focused on the industrial control, cybersecurity, and helping to educate and many customers as they're going through this digital transformation, especially in the industrial side. So looking forward to talk to many of you and answer the question you might have. And it'll be pretty exciting since we're the last session, so it'll be interesting.
Thank you, Richard and John. John, feel free to take control of the screen. The stage is yours.
Yeah, let me give it a second here. Can you see the screen now, Lucian?
Yes.
Excellent. All right. So what I wanted to do first, before Richard comes up, is talk to you a little bit about the cyber threat trends that we're seeing out there. Certainly in the energy sector, you're getting pummeled with a lot of different types of threats that are being seen out there in the world. Obviously the Russia-Ukraine conflict has brought up even more. In the U.S., the CISA has put out some, and DHS has put out some alerts to critical infrastructure industries to, for shields up and all that sort of stuff. So what I want to do is take you through a couple of different areas. The first thing, when you're thinking about your cybersecurity and what you need to be doing, is think about who is attacking you. And there's a number of different groups or different individuals out there that will attack organizations. From cyber criminals, which is predominant because they're the ones that are looking to gain profit. But we also see amateur script kiddies out there. We see competitive spies. We see hacktivists. Certainly, as I just mentioned, nation states are starting to get into play, and that's probably one of the more sophisticated groups that you're going to have to deal with as a defender. And so you need to understand, how these nation states would attack you, where would they attack you, all that kind of stuff. But also insiders is an area that we're starting to see more of, because what we're seeing now is some of the malicious actor groups and gangs actually recruiting insiders and pulling them into, say, here you get a 5% cut of the ransom in a ransomware attack is if you can give us access to your network. So that's a challenge, obviously. Insider threats are definitely one of the toughest ones to deal with. So you think about when you're thinking about defending your network, think about who could be attacking you and who is the most likely to attack you based on, where you are, who you are, all that good stuff. The next area I wanted to just highlight is some of the motivation. So what motivates these threat actors to target a lot of organizations? Espionage certainly is a big one. We see that a lot with China. China's trying to find out information, learning, stealing intellectual property, stealing process information. They don't want to build anything that direct themselves. They don't want to have to learn something themselves. They'll just steal it from somebody else who does it well. Financial gain, like I mentioned, is probably the biggest one that we're seeing today in a lot of these attacks, whether it's ransomware or some of the other extortion-based attacks. You also, though, now have disruption and destruction. And again, this is where the nation state, maybe in a cyber warfare type of scenario, hybrid warfare type of scenario, we'll probably start seeing these disruptive or destructive attacks, especially in the critical infrastructure. Energy, certainly, right? If I'm targeting a nation state in an attack, one of the things I definitely want to disrupt or destroy is the energy grid and getting that out there. So that's certainly going to be a challenge. And then the last one, which a lot of people don't realize, is the education factor. We all know about the attack on the Ukraine energy group a number of years ago by Russia. But one of the things that they were doing in that attack was actually learning how to attack an OT network, how to attack an energy grid. And that's what we're seeing a lot of times, where we see an attack come and it's not necessarily destructive or disruptive. There's no financial gain. It's more about just learning. Can I get on this ICS device? Can I get into this OT network? And then what capabilities do I have in that place? And they're just learning the trade, so to speak, so that in the future, when they actually do launch an actual attack, they have the means and the know-how in order to do that. The next area, this is kind of a evolution. And again, one of the challenges we have in the cybersecurity industry is that these attacks constantly change. You can see from 2001, where we had worm outbreaks and vulnerabilities, through web threats, through targeted attacks, mobile attacks, ransomware hit many years ago, business email compromise. And now we're seeing in 2021, we started to see these multiple extortion attacks where these threat actor gangs are going to get into the access your network, and they're going to probably steal information, steal critical data, and upload that to them, and then they'll launch a ransomware attack. And if you're, as an organization, you're well prepared in a ransomware attack, and you can rebuild your systems that are encrypted and rebuild the data that was encrypted, so you don't have to pay the ransom. They may come back as in a double extortion and say, hey, we stole this data first, we're going to publish it, or we're going to sell it in the underground, pay us an extortion fee to get it back. So these multiple extortion attacks are probably the latest thing. You also see the supply chain attacks that we saw in 2020. But again, the takeaway here is to remember that these malicious actors are constantly going to be changing their tactics, their TTPs, in order to continue to be successful. So we'll continue to see new types of threats, especially as we're starting to look at the OT network. That's probably an area that is certainly a challenge. So one of the things that Trend Micro did recently was we actually built a factory honeypot just to try to understand what types of threats target a factory and even a smart factory. So I wanted to give you some information that we did. So what we're trying to measure here is quality and quantity of cyber attacks. So we looked at the frequency and the impact of an attacker targeting a factory. And one of the things, kind of the observation we said, we actually ran this, it was a simulation, and I'll get into kind of how we built this thing, but it lasted 240 days. We observed and analyzed the real threats, and these are actual threats from people outside coming into the network, and it was the honeypot was located in the United States. we actually built a real environment. So we actually tried to build a simulated factory. So you can see here we had a router, firewall, switches. We had Siemens PLCs, Allen Bradley PLCs in there. We had Omron PLCs. We had HMIs in EWS, robotic workstations, all deployed on VMs. So we really built this to be as lifelike as possible. We even created a company, a fake company. So you can see here, we had a website we set up. We had fake employee data set up. So we actually built this and created an actual organization that so if a malicious actor wanted to check us out to make sure we were real, they would see real information, even though it was totally built up as a honeypot. So what did we observe? 30 cyber attacks were observed in 240 days. These attacks were, different ones. We had 5 malicious cryptocurrency mining attacks. So cryptocurrency mining is one of the things we're seeing a lot of happening these days. Obviously, what the malicious actors want to do in a cryptocurrency mining, they don't want to use their own resources, so they'll piggyback on stolen resources from organizations like this inside the factory. We saw 2 ransomware attacks. We saw steps used to commit fraud, 4 times of that. We had 6 times we saw an attack that affected factory productivity. In fact, we even saw in some cases the factory shut down because of the attack. We did not see any stolen information. So I mentioned earlier the multiple extortion. In this case, we didn't see them stealing any of the data. But again, that doesn't mean they wouldn't do that in the future. It's just in this example, in the threats that we saw targeting our factory honeypot, we did not see any of those. But you can see over the course of several months, different types of attacks. Notice fraud was gift card fraud, recon. Again, that recon, which is they're learning, they're trying to figure out what they can do when they get into a factory. They had, in November, you see, we had some fake ransomware happening. They had an HMI manipulation, excuse me, ransomware attacks that were targeting this as well. So certainly, one of the characteristics that we observed was that most of this was financially motivated. And that's, as I mentioned earlier in that motivation slide, that is predominantly what we are seeing today with attacks on factories is financially motivated. So ransomware, cryptocurrency, account abuse, but no stolen data at this point. But again, that's not something that is something we would likely see in the future. One of the things we saw was IT professional, but little knowledge about OT. So again, that education factor is starting to come into play already, that they definitely need to learn about the OT network and what they can do and what they can't do inside an OT network. So a lot of the attacks, you may not even see attacks today because most of what the activity is happening inside the network is just scanning the network, trying to identify, what are the systems that are on the OT network? What could I do? They may do something very quickly inside. So do something quick and again, get back out and erase their tracks so that you don't realize that they were in your network. So there's a number of activities that we can see there. Some of the insights we saw, factories certainly suffer cyber attacks. Most of the attacks are unlikely to be intentionally aimed at factories. That's one of the things that was interesting is obviously there's an IT component or a network in most factories. And so these attacks that could affect the IT network could actually bleed into the OT network or cross over into the OT network. IT-based cyber attacks can certainly decrease the productivity within it. You can see here that a lot of organizations are trying to digital automate their factories and their locations, software-based control. They're connecting everything to the internet. And that's going to cause some challenges. Obviously, you have these actors on the outside that could be financially motivated. They're looking for easy IP. So if you have open IPs to the internet, that's certainly going to be a big target for these criminal actors in the near term. And again, little knowledge about OT, which may help us, but in the long term, they will definitely learn that information. So targeting all these different aspects, whether it's your cloud infrastructure, your actual factory floor, or even the people inside your organization. So some of the challenges we see with factory, we see a lot of software not patched. So vulnerabilities are going to be high inside a lot of OT networks. We also saw a lot of systems that don't have installed security. And that's going to be a challenge for a lot of organizations. As we know, a lot of these devices are run by modern operating systems, and so they could host a security agent running on them. But in most cases, because of the situation in an OT network where uptime is critical, adding new software or applications is frowned upon in a lot of cases. But security is one area, one application you may want to look at. A lot of harsh and unique environments. We did see easy access once they got into the network. They were able to laterally move quite easily inside. A lot of non-skilled stakeholders inside OT. So cybersecurity still is becoming a new thing for a lot of people that are managing OT networks. So we're going to have to improve the education in that area. And then certainly factories are all over the world, and these actors are all over the world and going to be targeting them. So last thing I wanted to highlight is some attack trends that we're seeing. This actually comes from the data breach investigation report that Verizon publishes every year. And this actually was one from 2019. So it's a bit dated, but it's still very relevant. And the United States Secret Service actually interviewed a number of threat actors that they had arrested over the years. And they asked them, how did you get inside these networks? And one of the things that they mentioned, they first and foremost, they look for human errors. So again, that education of how to secure your OT network, how to secure your industrial control devices is going to be key, because they're going to look for human errors. If you configure something incorrectly, misconfigure something, that's going to show up, and it's going to be able to be accessed by these malicious actors. The second thing they look for is IT security complacency. So again, unpatched machines that don't run security. They're going to look for that complacency on your part. And the last one is technical deficiencies. So if you don't have some of the latest advanced detection technologies enabled inside your security software, they're going to look for those technical deficiencies that happen in there. And one of the key things that they mention is that when multiple TTPs are used in concert, that's when they're able to gain and maintain access to a computer network pretty easily. In fact, they had one actor that said they were inside a network for over 10 years, just using this type of stuff. The other thing they saw is they asked, what did you do once you were inside the network? And there were a couple of things. Obviously, establish continued access. That's where command and control infrastructures come into play. They're going to set that up so that they constantly have access to the internal network. They're going to escalate or obtain administrator privileges through account credentials. They're going to move slowly and map your entire network. So once they're in, they will map your OT network to identify what it is, how does it work, what devices are located in that network. Looking for open ports that they can compromise. They locate your crown jewels. In some cases, again, this could be your data that is residing inside the OT network or inside some of the databases attached to your networks. They're going to exfiltrate for as long as possible. The other thing that we're starting to see clearly in some of the tactics being used, one is extensive intelligence gathering. So they will identify before they even launch an attack, who do they want to target, how do they want to target, where do they want to target, when do they want to target them, why do they want to target them. All that's going to be answered up front before they even launch the attack. Another aspect is we're seeing a lot of collaboration in the underground market. So You're getting access as a service brokers who specialize in just accessing networks, and then they will sell that access to maybe a ransomware gang or a gang that steals data. So you're getting this collaboration inside the criminal undergrounds, that where specialization is becoming more and more pronounced. A lot of anti-forensics is being utilized, living off the land, which is using some of the same tools that you utilize inside your organization. They're going to use the same tools to do lateral movement or exfiltration or account gathering, something like that, so that it looks like your own people are using them. All these attacks are going to go across the entire network, so they're not going to start and end at an endpoint. They're going to laterally move. Again, they're probably going to go from the IT network into the OT network at some point. So you need to defend all the different areas of your network. Island hopping and supply chain attacks, we do believe are going to continue. This is where you need to start looking at your third parties vendors who have access to your network. Make sure that connection is very secure. In your supply chains, your software supply chains, you want to start thinking about those, making sure those are secure as well. And then some of the commonalities we see. So this comes from our tech support group. And this is where we see what is happening and how these malicious actors are getting into organizations. Very similar to what the Secret Service saw, but weak credentials. So they're going to look for and try to escalate privilege into some of your administrative accounts, which is where two-factor authentication is going to help you. Outdated and unpatched operating system and applications, especially in your OT network. A lot of our customers and people who get compromised do not enable their advanced detection technologies. So a lot of artificial intelligence and machine learning are being used today. So you want to do as much as possible to enable those types of technologies inside your network. Misconfigurations, I mentioned, this continues to be a problem for a lot of organizations. And then unsecured devices. And this really comes into play in the OT network, where a lot of these industrial IoT devices, robots and so forth, maybe not be able to host a security agent. So you have to build perimeter security around them. So maybe network IPS or something that can block a threat from getting into this device, even if that device cannot utilize a security agent on it. So that's an area you need to think about and look into as well. And then the last thing I wanted to highlight is just ransomware is always going to be the last option because it is the most noisy. It's the most visible attack that you're going to see. So if you detect a ransomware malware, just understand that you have probably already been compromised in other areas of your network for quite a long time before the ransomware was deployed. So that's an indication that you probably were attacked quite a while ago and they've been in your network for some time. So take that as a call to action for sure. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Richard Koo now, who's going to talk to you about some of the security solutions that are available to you.
Thanks, John. Yeah, so I think I have about 10 to 12 minutes to try to give everyone an update on some of the technologies and capabilities that we have. I think over the last, I would say, a couple of years, I've been coming in here and providing a lot of, I would say, education, recommendation and stuff like that. But today, I think, as John was talking about all the different type of threats into the IT OT networks, what I want to do is I want to spend, those minutes to talk about some of the product and solution from Trend Micro or our sister company called TX1 Networks, right? And so before I begin, this is just a high level, basically kind of, I would say, overview of the difference between IT and OT devices, right? And John talked a lot of those already, but you can see this is just a simple comparison, between IT, OT environment, on the IT side, a lot of, I think folks focus the priority on the confidentiality or priority of the networks, right? And this kind of environment, our service, multiple purpose, right? Running different type of application, different type of operating system, and is high tolerance, right? And to kind of interruption or latency and those things, and the OT networks, right? These are mission critical system, right? Carrying both productivities and availability, and then, like John mentioned, a low tolerance for interruption or latency. And many of these environments are air gap, or they have old operating system, and is update and patch are not available, and it's only available during maintenance time. So just something to think about from a profile perspective. Okay, John, next slide. All right, so this is just a high level positioning. I think many of Trend Micro have been around for more than 30 years, and we have been spending many of those years focused on the IT side and on this particular reference architecture, right? And that's what we've been doing, everything from level 4, level 5, very much on the, enterprise networks. But over the last 5 to 7 years, we have been I would say a little subsidiary called TX1 Networks, and that particular company focus on really more design on adaptive cybersecurity solution for the OT networks, or shop floor, right? So you can see there on those products we're going to be talking about today is going to cover everything from level 0, 1, 2, and 3 on the OT networks. Okay, so just how we position our product, right? Trend Micro IT security solution on the traditional IT environment, and TX1 Networks product on the OT networks. Next, John. So as we all been talking about the digital transformation, right, and the convergence between IT and OT, right? And when this happened, you really are opening up the attack vectors. You're basically expanding yourself, to all these convergence, right? And so this is something to think about. Traditionally, I think the IT and OT always kind of somewhat separate. They're not really convergent, but because of the digital transformation over the last couple of years, now you have this convergence happening, and you are really, basically going to open up the whole OT network for different type of attacks. Next slide, John. Okay, next. So before I go talk about some of the Trend Micro, TX1 Network solution, I'm gonna kind of step back a little bit, just provide some high level recommendation, right? For too many of the organization out there, especially for me, when we come to a cybersecurity strategy, there are 4 key pillars that I really want people to think about, right? One is the people, second is the process, and third is technology, and then last but not least is the culture. I think it's important, from a people point of view, that you have good trained staff and they understand and aware of the cybersecurity, and make sure that within the organization you have professional people who have the skill and the qualifications to deal with a certain type of cyber threat, or from recovery, or from any type of attack. And that's something important to have, and you have competence people and resource. So that's important to think about when you're planning your cyber strategy. And then, of course, from a process perspective, right, you want to make sure that you have governance, policy, and framework in place, right? Have some type of management system, some best practice guideline, right, or some kind of IT, OT auditing. So always make sure that you are on the latest and greatest technology, or everything's in compliance. So that's a good thing to have. And then from a technology perspective, and John kind of talk about this a little bit, right? But every technology, on the IT side is not always going to work on the OT network, right? And so make sure that any technology you're bringing into the OT networks need to be test, verify, and validate before you are deploying into your networks. And of course, make sure you have the competence, people, right, to deploy some of this technology, because people who understand the IT network not necessarily going to understand a lot of technology on the OT networks. So that's something you need to think about when it comes to a technology point of view. And then, of course, last but not least is creating that I would say culture, security culture within the organization that can really reduce your risk. And that kind of start from the top all the way down to all level of the organization. So from a very, very high level perspective, these are the 4 fundamental baseline that I think that we all need to have when it comes to a good cyber strategy. Next slide. And then, of course, these are just some recommendations. I talked about this before, but these are some of the industry standard, best practice, to protect industrial control system. So depending on what, sector you're coming from, for example, here, energy, right? They have several, I think, standard frameworks out there. And this is a good guideline. It's been around for many years. So I would recommend that everybody go and look at this. For example, if you're from the energy sector, you have the NERC SIP, right? Or ISO 27000, IEC 62351, and also the IEC 61162-460, right? These are good standard to kind of follow from an energy point of view. And if you're on, like, say, industrial, automation, like maybe smart factories or pharmaceuticals, stuff like that, NIST 800-53 or some of the, IEC 62443 standard, these are good standard, good reference architecture that you can actually go out there and look at as a guideline. There's no need to reinvent the wheel because many of these have been around and it's already been thought through. So it's a good guideline to start. Next slide. Yeah, so let me kind of focus a little bit on some of the OT, ICS, network security control from Trend Micro, right? This is a typical high-level reference architecture that I kind of consolidated kind of the Purdue model. I think many of you are aware. And then the IT side on side by side on the top, I have added some kind of cloud platform offering. And so you can see on the left side, you have, this is kind of the enterprise, OT networks, operation technology. On the right side, you have the IT networks. And, on the left side, you have everything from level 0, level 1, 2, and 3. This is where most of the, critical systems are going to be reside, right, in the operational technology environment. And those are the environment you want to secure. So you can see at the level 0, we have different Trend Micro product, everything from our Edge IPS to, our other type of solution that you can actually embed it into the device itself. And then, of course, you have some other system like HMI machine or stuff like that, where you can secure those systems with some kind of whitelisting. And then on the level number 3, most of this environment are typically kind of the operational center or the area. And some of the systems are typically fairly up to date, right? And so you have different security solution, everything from a traditional, anti-malware products to your Edge IPS or some firewall product you can deploy in there. And then across between IT, OT networks, you do have, solution you can actually put it in between the IT, OT networks to make sure that everything going between the two networks are protected. And then on the very top, depending on how your device or component communicate to the cloud, right? You can go from the device to the edge, and from the edge talking to your cloud. And so we do have solution that can actually help you secure those individual device or in front of the gateway or secure your workload in the cloud. It doesn't matter if you're on AWS or in Google Cloud or Azure, right? We can help you secure those environments, right? So on a very high level, this is kind of diagram kind of show you where you potentially can protect your OT networks within the organization on every layer from level 0 all the way up to level 5 on the enterprise side. Next slide, John. So here we have provided for many of our customers, and these are products available today. Depend on what organization you are, what sector you are coming from, but we have a couple of products, right? We have a single segment, a product called Edge IPS, and this typically deploy very versatile, and it's a whitelisting, and also can be deployed in a harsh environment. We also some virtual patch capability, and it does provide some hardware bypass. So let's say if you have PLCs or DCS system, and you want to put that on in front of the parameter, you could put that in front of your PLC or your DCS, and you could do that as well. Or you can put it in front of the HMI machine, right? If you don't want to deploy anything inside the host itself. So that's kind of the single segment. And then as you move to the right side, we have this called two wide area networks or LAN interface. And this is more for, if you're doing like micro segmentation within your, let's say, OT networks, and then all the capability will provide. In addition to that, it's also provides some type of NAT firewall capability as well, right? And then the last piece is the kind of Edge IPS Pro, right, where you can deploy on a very large networks, and and basically you can do network segmentation, but then they have dedicated segment ports, right? And you also have all the virtual patching capabilities, and also it's got a programmable hardware bypass, and you can put it between east and west traffic, and it's got all the different capabilities of IT or IP protocol, whitelisting, and those things as well. So this is some of the things that it provides. Now, there's two other products that we have called the Stellar Enforce and Stellar Protect, right? So typically in the OT environment, especially in case of many of those HMI machines, right? You have very old operating system, and you don't want to deploy, say a full AV product in there. Then you can do a lockdown. Okay, so we have a product called basically Stellar Protect and Enforce. And the Enforce product basically allow you to basically do a whitelisting, do some basic AV scanning, and it also can lock down all your USB device in there. So that's the product can be deployed inside the host on an HMI machine. And then of course, Stellar Protect. If you want to deploy, let's say, a real-time, full-blown AV product with all the virtual patching or the behavior monitoring and all the new capabilities, you can actually deploy a product called Stellar Protect, and that can be deployed on that environment. And last but not least, we have this OT Defense Console, which allows you to basically manage, deploy, and see complete visibility across all your OT networks, from your device all the way up to your let's say HMI machine, or some of your high-end system within the operation level, right? So you can manage and see all those. And the last product is called Portable Security. And this is typically is more of a USB stick that allows you to perform, say, quick scanning of your device if it's on, let's say, on the edge, or if it's on a remote site, or if you have an air gap environment and you want to perform some kind of scanning to make sure it's in compliance. You can also use this particular product, and then once you perform the scanning, you can bring that device, you connect to your OT Defense network console, and then you can see the complete your statistic and also visibility across some of those air gap environments. So that's a product called Portable Security. Okay, John, next. Yeah, I already talked about this, so I'll send this slide if somebody needs it, but this is kind of the simple deploy model, right? Where you can have, in between the IT OT networks or between a different segment, and you want to do micro segmentation on a large scale, then you can, use this product called Edge IPS Pro. It's much more scale, and you can do virtual patching, network segmentation, and you can do all the network trust and everything in this particular product. So there's a lot of capability, and we're happy to talk to you more on this. Next. Next slide, John.
Right. So if
I think we're at the end there, Richard. Let me stop sharing now.
Yeah, why don't we just take one quick question? I know we're out of time here, but and then we take some of the questions offline. But one of the questions came in a queue here is what is the most important technical advancement needed to merge the IT and OT to be unified? And they're commenting on some of the previous speakers mentioned that perhaps they implement a software-defined infrastructure, which could be something that affects the factory. Any commentary from you folks before we close up?
Yeah, I'll add it. I would say not even a technology, right? I mean, it's more about the people, right? I think that when you have this convergence between IT, OT networks, and right now there's an unclear definition and roles and responsibility between the IT, OT, right? And so I think that fundamentally you have to solve that problem first, make sure they can, and they will have the knowledge and the communication between, I think, the IT, OT. And then I think the technology will, I think, more of a secondary, but it's that, I think the people itself is the fundamental thing that got to solve.
Got it. Thank you, Richard. So with that, I want to give you 30 seconds each to just, what do you leave audience with? One key takeaways, how do you secure the OT space?
John,
Yeah,
you
this
want
is John. I'll go first, Richard, and then you can go real quick from my
to?
perspective. Get just understanding the threat that can target your organization and putting together an incident response plan that includes business continuity, system continuity, so that if something should happen, you have the ways and means to continue your organization's business process from functioning. So Richard can talk a little bit more about solution capabilities, though.
Thank you, Richard.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I think very fundamental, right? I talk about 4 key pillars. I think those have to be, people, process, technology, and culture. I think that's please make that as important, because everything else after that could be much more of a fundamental thing that we have to do. There are already security solution out there, designed purposely for the OT networks, and so just make sure that you test and validate and verify all this product before you deploy on your environment. All right.
Got it. Thank you, everybody. And thanks for the speakers for the amazing knowledge and insights. Thanks again for the sponsor, Hitachi Ventura, HiveMQ, Fortinet, Schneider Electric, Siemens, and Trend Micro, and Ursalio for sponsoring this day, especially Trend Micro for this particular session. Your support, we have all this great content here to share. So we'll make the links available within the next 48 to 72 hours. With that, what I like to transition to is the drawing. So again, everybody that posted question in the Q&A, you'll get an email invite to the VIP community. And then and now we have 8 books to draw. So I want to switch over to sharing to our browser and make sure you still take that survey up there. And the results here we go. So what we did is we've taken everybody's name and we went to a website called Wheel of Names, and we're going to draw 8 names. So I'm not going to list them all. Paul on my team is going to take a snapshot, and we're going to get your email. Or if you are still in the audience, make sure you send us your physical address. Essentially, we're going to send this book to you. So here we go. The first winner of the Daniel Elizalde book, the keynote speaker for today is, and coming up, Lisa Rabon. So if you're in the audience, send us the address. If not, we will reach out via email to get your physical address. So here's one, and let's go for a second book. Again, we had 8 sessions, so we're gonna draw 8 winners. So here is Goodman Henry Goodman. Please send us your address. If not, our team will reach out. Here is the third winner of Daniel Zella's book. All right, Enrique Elias, sorry, I saw you just posted questions, so you didn't get to it, but we'll get to you offline. Thanks for joining us. So 4th winner. All right, Christopher, please reach out to us. Here we go. Let's go to another one. Oh, Lisa, I apologize. You're a double winner, but we can't have that. So apologize. I must have clicked too fast. So the 5th one will have to be withdrawn. All right, Assam Patur, remove. There we go. The 6th winner. Yusuf Sani, thanks for joining us this morning. I saw you earlier. And 2 more. Aloha, well, Marjuab, so apologize if I butchered your name. And last but not least, here's the last winner of the Daniel Zana book. And with that, we're going to conclude the program. I want to thank you, everybody, for staying this late, extra time. So here we go, the Scott Gerard. So thank you for joining, everybody. This concludes the program for today. So Appreciate everybody's time, and stay tuned for other educational, like we have at the end of the month on June 30th, we have an AI in solutions for manufacturing. We have ICS cybersecurity right on this topic, a full day of session on October 12th. And of course, IoT World Manufacturing Day and supply chain on December 7th. Thanks a lot. Have a good day.